after we went to the United Nations after filing an official complaint against the Commerce Department and Census Bureau for all sorts of international issues, including misrepresentation, identity theft, genocide, and a number of other things that they participated in the development of the United States Corporation itself. NAAIP is an institution that's currently designed to assist tribal families and tribal nations on repatriating to the original tribal government that our people used to hold. So many of the people of this country have been disenfranchised from the 16 and 1700s, disenfranchised as Negro, and have progressed through what we are today. And so many of us are labeled as African American, which is an immigrant, beginning with the letter I, immigrant, not from this particular landmass. So what we've been doing, we initially started out with Native American groups, BIA groups, in assisting them to make sure that they were receiving the claims that they were afforded. And in the process, we began to have lots of requests from our brothers that we knew were American Aborigine. And let me say this, not to mean to offend anyone, but I'm not here to support the black issue. I don't know of any black issues that exist. I am an American Aborigine, and I have many family members across this country that resemble me, and they are not black. And I don't carry that totem. That's a misnomer. That's a very, very destructive misnomer for American Aborigine, the original people of this country. So I stand firm in promoting the American Aborigine and the rights that belong to the American Aborigine, the laws that belong to the American Aborigine. The laws are the same as the laws perfected for the Native American and for the American Indian. And we have been tricked and, as Malcolm said, bamboozled into believing something that's not what we are. But I'm here to help to facilitate the transfer of information, the transformation of power to the Chattahoochee Nation and its people. NAAIP was invited down here to participate in those efforts of repatriation, which we've already begun. And the Chattahoochee Nation, they are the same blood as this lady that many might remember as Verdiatsi Washington. She carried the helm for so many of the people of this territory, and these people are from this territory. Therefore, they are subject to the same benefits and rights that the Empress laid down years ago. And what we're here to do with the Chattahoochee Nation is to make sure that the repatriation process includes a lot of those provisions and laws and protections, and many of them that were not laid out initially. The Chattahoochee Nation actually extends all the way to Canada because that's where their ancestors held land, all the way to Canada. So we will be moving against the state of Michigan in legal precedents, filing suit against them for the water crisis, because there are quite a few, nearly 1,000 members of the Chattahoochee Nation that actually live in the state of Michigan. So we will be moving to provide health care and education benefits and things of that sort for them after we complete the repatriation process that we're currently underway with. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this, because you've piqued my interest here. Now, you refer to yourself as the American Indigenous, is that correct?
American Aborigine.
American Aborigine.
Yes.
Now, to me, those are terms that conflict with each other.
Okay.
I mean, how can you be Aborigine, Indigenous, and American at the same time? This is bad. Wait a minute. That's as bad as me considering myself as an African American. When we know that the colonialists came here, they stole everything from the indigenous people. I personally couldn't understand how I could embrace or encompass myself with them and what they have done, and include them in any identity that I may claim. So if you're Aborigines, how can you be American Aborigines when The Americans came, and that wasn't until 1400s. And you were here a lot longer than that. I mean, centuries before that.
I can answer that for you.
Please.
Through the process of what we do at NAAP so that we don't have conflict with the government power, we utilize a lot of the laws that come from their books that they're not able to rebut.
Okay.
They say that an American is an Aborigine. They say that an Aborigine is a Negro, is an Indian in their law. So we utilize their law to provide protections for our people while they are in charge of our landmass. So there's clarity as to the difference between, and one appears to conflict the other, but we're operating in law, and that's what's most important.
And I understand that, and you have cleared it up, so I can understand why it's the NAAIP, which is very similar to the NAACP.
That's correct.
And we know, and I know, and many of us know, that the NAACP has not been a friend to black folks.
That's correct.
Or the Negro.
That's correct.
Whichever you want to call it here in this country. But I want to go over here to the historian, Chateau Pa, and want to find out what your take on that is.
Alito, that means greetings. All right, what Brother Enoch was saying is that the Europeans didn't call themselves Americans until way later, so therefore that is identity theft, like Brother Enoch said. So therefore the word America actually comes from South America, which was dealing with a mountain that our family down there called America. So that was way before any American Resfusions or any of those pale face that came over. Remember, they was British, French, and Spanish. They was not Americans. They adopted that name. You can go to the Webster Dictionary, unabridged dictionary from 1825 and 1828, where they said that American was a copper tone race that was found here by the Europeans. Now they actually use that term for those born in America now for themselves. So that's identity theft.
Okay. If you want to claim that as identity theft, and if you want to claim a European name as being part of yours, that is a personal choice. And I mean, I respect that.
No, that's not a European name. America is not a European name.
Okay. It's an Indian name, is that what you're saying?
It's an Aboriginal name.
Aboriginal name?
Yes.
Okay. Brother Chief Bald Eagle, you are a masking Indian as well. How do you connect your historic masking Indians with the historic indigenous Indians?
Well, Alito, well, basically, it was our culture originally. And because of the racism and the laws that were passed here in Louisiana, quote unquote, black folks running around with feathers on because they couldn't tell the Indians from the black folks or the slaves. And over the period of time, we have just let other people come in and put these labels on us, and we ran with it. Mardi Gras Indian. All of our songs deal with Mardi Gras Indian. And when we say we masking, we're really not masking. We're doing what we always did culturally. So it's a very natural thing for me. And I look at some of the brothers and sisters that mask Indian, they just don't know the history. And we've been given other people's versions of our history and let other people tell our story. And that needs to stop.
Mm. And I agree 100% with that. We have been allowing other people to tell our story. But going back to Tushka Mook, you are trying to move within the confines of the law, European law. And my problem is, at one time, the European law allowed for slaves, from which I'm a descendant of. I don't know, and the knowledge that I have, though it may be limited, of European law, whether it's here in this country, whether it's in any country on the face of this earth, European law has always been established to take care of, maintain, and justify what Europeans do to others. So you're trying to get land back. I'm trying to understand, and you mentioned Malcolm. Malcolm had gone to the United Nations, which is another group of Europeans, who will take sides with their brothers here in a court of law. But how do you see yourself gaining anything worthwhile from European laws who care nothing about indigenous law, which was the first law, when they came in and did what they did?
You have the law of nations, that's international law. You have just cogent, which is international law, which is international customary law. International customary law is just simple common law that travels the globe. What we have is international customary law. We have federal law, federal code, which protects Aborigines or Indians in this country. And we have what's called tribal law that's established through the Court of Indian Offenses. And with tribal law, that's based on the tribe's constitution. That's based on tribal belief. That's based on tribal spirituality. So the laws that you speak of are not the laws that the members of NAAIP practice, and it's not the level of laws that we promote for the protection of our people. We use many laws, and we protect our people with all those laws. And environmental racism is one of the key components that we utilize in protecting our people, because everything in this country has been concluded because of environmental racism. And that involves genocide and all sorts of other atrocities that have happened to the Aborigine people. I don't use the word indigenous because the United Nations adopted indigenous, and there's some indigency within that term and the meeting and the conventions that were established by the United Nations. The United Nations says in its declaration that indigenous people must file constructive notice to the state for all issues pertaining to the rights of the indigenous people. Constructive notice is a form of legal document. It's an affidavit. It's an affidavit that must be responded to, must be rebutted, and when it's not, it stands as fact in law. And we have numerous cases for numerous members around the country where we utilize what's called Article 3 jurisdiction, which was created by the United States. But the United States was a bunch of black men before they all turned white. And that's something that we have to research in history, that they were black men that created, black Indians that created the laws of the United States. It's just that they've been convoluted and legislated out through legislative process of color of law that has changed the premise of law itself. We function with our people by utilizing the Constitution. The Constitution is the first law. It says that the only relationship with the United States and the Indians is that of commerce, in transacting commerce, nothing else. So we stand on that and we bring them to that. We lean police officers, we take their jobs. We don't have problems with law enforcement. They give us tremendous respect because we know how to take what's most important from them, their pocket, their money, their jobs, their children's tuition. So we, as the premier institution for indigenous people in this country, we function out of a consulate that protects indigenous people that come from other countries who are not having embassies at the United States in Washington, D.C., or consulate offices. So we utilize their law to keep them in check. And that's the problem with the Indians of the past. They refused to learn the white man's ways, and he was able to completely annihilate them and consume them. So we are now utilizing their law to flip it back on them and make a few changes.
You know, there is a treaty that I had noted when I was doing the research for this evening. It's called the Dancing Rabbit Creek Treaty.
Yes, I'm familiar.
You're familiar with that. Within that treaty, they turned the indigenous people from being free people into slaves. The way they did that was they promised them that they would give them certain land, certain privileges, certain gratuities, what I call trinkets, junk beads, essentially is what it ends up being. But